Hello everyone and welcome in another session of AGC webinars. My name is Susanna Ayeti and I'm the AGC Portfolio Marketing Manager and your host for today. Today's topic is verification planning of food safety. In the next 30 minutes, we will go through verification of HACCP plan, methods of verification, and analysis of verification's result system. To tell us more about it, joining us is Ms. Sheryl Anderson. She is the Managing Director of Quality System Solutions Initiatives, which is a consultancy organization that offers training, implementation, and audit services in ISO 22000, ISO 9001, and HACCP. She's an ISO 9001 Lead Auditor and a certified trainer for HACCP, ISO 9001, and ISO 22000, and other quality improvement courses. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, feel free to write them in the question box in the right-hand control panel. Please, Ms. Anderson, you may start the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Susanna. I'm Sheryl Anderson and I'll be presenting this morning on verification planning of your food safety system. This is just to give you a little bit more information about me. As Susanna had said before, I am in charge of the Quality System Solutions Initiatives company, and we provide consultancy. And my information is there, so you may contact me directly if you need to have some clarifications to any questions that you may have or you may have after the presentation or as matters arise. All right, the topics that I'm going to be covering today are listed: verification activities for your prerequisite programs or your hygiene programs, your verification of your HACCP plan or your food safety plan, the methods that you're going to be using for verification, and they vary, and looking at how you go about analyzing these results. Now, one of the things that I would like to look at before we start is looking at the difference between verification and validation, and we are going to be looking at both, but I want you to understand the differences. I'm going to read from the slides and explain as I go along. Verification is the application of methods or procedures or tests or sampling or other evaluation in addition to conducting monitoring within your system to determine whether your controls or your preventive controls, your risk-based controls are effective. You may have identified some CCPs in your organization and you want to know that these CCPs or these critical control points or whatever control measures are operating as intended. You also want to check whether your monitoring or your deviation procedures are being conducted as per your written program in the HACCP plan. You also want to check if the records are maintained, and you want to check if they are under control. When you're doing verification too, you're also checking the trends in your monitoring results to determine whether or not you have control over these over your food safety system, or whether you have control over these hazards. Now, looking at validation now. So while in verification you're doing checking, validation is the application of methods to ensure that your critical limits, your prerequisite programs, or your control measures are achieving the intended purposes. In other words, is it effective in controlling the hazard? So if I say that my temperature is 212 degrees Fahrenheit to be cooked for 11 minutes, has it controlled the hazard? So I need to validate that that method is effective in controlling the hazard that I've identified within that appropriate level. Now, in every food safety system, there's going to be verification, and you want to go about planning for this verification. You should have a verification procedure. You should have a verification schedule. And what it does, it documents an overview of the programs or the procedures or the activities that need to be verified. Now, your verification will be different based on the type of company that you're operating, the type of product that you're producing. It looks at the risks associated with the process. So if I'm in a meat processing factory, that is a high level, that is a high risk level associated with the process, versus if I'm producing snacks. So the risk level is going to be different in meats versus snacks. So my verification is going to vary based on the product or the process. It's going to vary also based on my critical control points. So I'm going to go further to say that my verification, or the number of verification that I have, will be directly proportional to the level of risk associated with the product or the process. So therefore, what I'm saying, there's going to be more verification in a meat processing plant versus maybe a snacks plant. Also, I'm going to be looking at previous audits to find out whether or not I need to increase my verification, or could I reduce my amount of verification. For instance, if I did a second party audit, like my supplier audit, based on the fact that that supplier has a very robust food safety system, I may actually reduce the frequency of my verification. So for instance, my number of verifications for a particular supplier is once per year. So based on the result of the audit, I may actually reduce the verification to doing the audit once every 2 years. So the verification activity will vary based on what comes out of the audit. So if there are lots of adverse findings within the audit, you'll find that I may want to increase some of my verification activities. Same thing for the number of corrective action raised. If there's a lot of non-conformities that were raised in the audit, or if there were some corrective actions outstanding, I may want to increase the frequency of my verification. Also, it's based on my customer complaint analysis as well as the results of my management review. So in particular, for instance, in a typical management review, some of the outputs may be, will have some changes to your system. For instance, the management may decide or announce that they are going to be expanding their product line or increasing their product line. So based on the fact that I'm going to make the changes in my management, in my food safety system, do I need to increase the level of verification because of the risks that may come with that change? So it could be a change of a product line or increasing the product line, or I could be automating my system. Do I need to increase verification? Do I need to reduce my level of verification? Now, with your verification procedure and schedule, your procedure should outline the reason why you're doing this verification. What is the purpose of carrying out this verification? What are the methods that I'm going to be using? How often I'm going to be doing my verification activities? Who is responsible for it? And you're going to make some reference to record. So when you're developing your verification schedule, you want to be very specific about these aspects of the system, because you are not the only, as a quality manager, for instance, you're not the only person who will be doing that verification. You may have the production manager involved, the production supervisor, the sanitation officer, so you want to outline very specific, you want to ensure that all of the information is involved in this verification schedule so everybody knows exactly what is supposed to be done. And your verification schedule is a living document. It manages your food safety system. It can change from time to time, as I said, based on the risk level, and so you want to make sure that that verification is living and breathing within your system. And it must be suitable to your specific needs, your organization specific needs, and also your operations, your product line, your processes. It is supposed to be customized to you. It is also customized to the culture of your organization. Now, if I'm just going to make reference to ISO 22000 at clause 7.2, some of the verifications that you'll be doing is of the prerequisite programs. For instance, you would be doing verification of your water quality. And as I said before, how often you verify your water quality will depend on your risk level. It's going to depend on your product. It's going to depend on your process. For instance, there are some organizations may do verification of their water quality twice per year. The method of verification is having an accredited lab conducting the test on the water quality, or you may have somebody doing chlorine checks every hour on the hour, but that depends on the type of products that you're making. So the verification of water quality in company A is going to be different from the verification of water quality in company B. The fact is, it should be recorded and communicated to the persons who are responsible for carrying out this verification. Another thing is sanitation. There are some companies that may do sanitation at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, while you have some companies doing sanitation right throughout the day because of the type of product that they are producing. Pest control can be a weekly check. Pest control can be a monthly check. Pest control could be integrated where you have your internal person doing a weekly check and then having a contracted certified company coming in to do your pest control checks every month. However, the point is that should be recorded on your verification schedule. Do I dispose of my garbage at the end of the day, or do I do the disposal twice per day? The fact is, it should be recorded, etc. Now, I extracted this from a typical company's verification schedule, and one of the things that they outlined here is they developed a table and they looked at what area or item should I verify. What is the verification method that I'm going to be using? What type of record should be completed? What is the output of this verification? Who is the person who is responsible for conducting the verification, and how often should I do this verification? So, for example, this is a low-risk product that is being used at this company. So they come in and they do their employee hygiene check. So the method of verification that they use is observation. So they will do their check of their personnel, for instance, to see that they have their hair nets, their coats on, their fingers, nails are low, it's not polished, etc., etc. The verification record that should be completed is the pre-op checklist. The person who does that verification is a production supervisor. How often do they do it? They do it daily. I would say here that they could qualify it and say every morning. Another one is clean and sanitation. The cleaning and verification is done. They observe the sanitation being done. They complete their sanitation log, and it is a quality control and food safety coordinator that does that verification, and it is done daily. In your organization, it could be your sanitation officer that does the verification of sanitation. So there are different things here that are being verified. The food defense program, the production manager is responsible for conducting that verification, and the record that is completed is the food defense plan verification record, and he does that annually every April. Supplier approval, their method of verification is supplier audits or evaluation. Their records include the audit checklist or their letters of guarantee, and that is done every February each year. They have here as well their glass and brittle plastics program. They do observation, they do their counts, they check to see if there are any cracks, any breakages, check the record to see if there have been any breakages over the past month, and their verification record is included on their GMP checklist. The quality control and food safety coordinator does that verification, and she does that monthly on the last day of the month. That is where she qualifies it. Now, we are required to verify the prerequisite programs to see that they're working, because we're going to now build the HACCP plan on a stable and functioning prerequisite program. And you want to verify that your HACCP plan is functional or working. So for instance, on a HACCP plan, you may have identified the CCPs, but you also identify some control measures, and you also have determined that some of your prerequisite programs are functioning properly in order for the controls, your CCPs, to be working. So what I tell my clients to do is walk your HACCP plan right throughout the process. You need to check. So if you say that the sanitation is going to take care of this particular hazard that you have identified, you have to check to see if those control measures are working or functioning properly. So you check these, you're checking to see whether the CCPs are being monitored, whether the prerequisite programs are being implemented. You're checking to see if the records are being kept. You're also checking, you have checked to see whether your process schedule have been validated. In other words, check to see if I'm cooking a particular product for 212 degrees Fahrenheit for 11 minutes, that is actually controlling the hazard. If that has been determined or validated by a scientific authority, for instance, and does the documentation correspond to the operational processes? So you have to ensure that you have done that verification of your HACCP plan to ensure that the CCPs are being monitored, because the whole point of having your HACCP plan is to ensure that the hazards that have been identified are being eliminated or it is being controlled. Now, with the validation, you are supposed to check that validation is performed. And as I said before, you want to check if the methods that you are using are effective. So at the time of designing your HACCP plan or developing your CCPs, you want to check if it is fully implemented. In other words, validation is performed at the time of the CCPs are being designed. It really should be validated annually. Whatever controls you have in place, your HACCP plan should be validated annually, and you should do validation when changes have been made to your system. Now, validation depends on the CCP that you have identified. Now, you want to get some scientific confirmation that your critical limit is effective for the hazard that you have controlled. This can be done by an external authorized personnel, someone who has a requisite certification to conduct that validation. You want to make sure that you have, for a validation, could be commissioning testing data for a specific piece of equipment, and whether that particular equipment is capable of meeting the critical limit. So you want to check if your equipment can actually cook at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Because if you have identified that critical control point to be temperature, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, you want to make sure that your equipment can perform effectively to ensure that that critical limit is capable of meeting that critical limit. You want to do your annual validation activities, and this should also be recorded similar to how we recorded it in the verification plan. You want to ensure that a review of your product descriptions, a list of ingredients, your incoming raw materials, your process flow diagram, your schematic diagrams, to ensure that they're up to date. So you're conducting your annual validation activities for your HACCP plan. You want to know that you have identified all the food safety hazards. If you have increased you have extended your product line, or if you have gotten a new piece of equipment, you want to make sure that you're still controlling the food safety hazards and you're maintaining the integrity of your food safety system. Excuse me. You want to ensure that you review all the hazards that you have identified in the HACCP plan to ensure that they're accurate and the control measures are identified. Are they working? Are they performing as how they should be performing? You want to review your process controls, your CCPs, to ensure that they are up to date and whether they're, and where required, revalidated. You want to look at the results of the desired outcome to see whether or not it is functioning as required. You want to also check the regulation, because sometimes there may be times that regulations can change from time to time. So you want to check to see if there are any changes in the regulations and you are conforming to those regulations and conform to the requirements defined in your food safety manual. Now, there are times when verification does not demonstrate conformity, because in your verification activities you notice that there are some trends, there are some deviations. What you're going to be looking at is your existing procedures, looking at the adequacy of your existing procedures. For instance, have these procedures been communicated effectively to the relevant persons who are supposed to be controlling these hazards? Have you gotten to the correct conclusion of in the hazard analysis? Are the relevant justifications adequate? Have the critical limits been correctly identified? You want to go back and ask those questions. Are your prerequisite programs working effectively? Do I need to put in another level of control or not? Or am I putting in too much control for a particular prerequisite that I've identified? I also want to look at the effectiveness of my training, or how I control my production workers on the floor. So you want to question these things, these areas, if the verification does not demonstrate conformity. And you want to analyze to see whether or not it is meeting the overall performance or the required planned performance of your food safety system. Do you need to update, or do you need to improve? Have there been any trends that have been identified? And you want to check to see if there were some non-conformities that I have identified in the past, and I've developed some corrections or corrective action plans. I need to check to see if there's evidence that they have been implemented, and not just implemented, but are they effective? We also want to analyze we have analyzed the individual verification results. You want to make sure that they are recorded, by the way. So even though you have done your verification, you have to ensure that the analysis of the verification results are being recorded. Number one. You want to make sure that they are reported to top management in your quarterly or monthly or yearly management reviews. It should form inputs into your management reviews, and it should be used to update the system. So it's a very formal process that you're conducting. So you can choose how you go about your verification activities. I may do a report on verification activities every quarter, because every quarter I have my management review, so I do it in time for my management review. It is your prerogative or I should go for the systems prerogative. So let me just hand over to Susanna and we'll talk more about the 22,000 training. Susanna?
Yes, thank you, Sheryl, very much for this presentation. I would like to say a couple of words for our courses on ISO 22001. So I would like to inform you that PCB provides training and certification services for ISO 22000, Introduction, Foundation, Lead Implementer, and Lead Auditor. This training is designed to help your organization deliver safe products and show that your organization is committed to excellence in food safety. A PCB certificate will demonstrate your dedication in implementing and managing these processes and frameworks, and most importantly, you will be recognized worldwide. For more information, please visit our website, pcb.com/training. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. So the first question is, can you give us some tips to measure food safety culture and food safety behavior?
There are, for instance, your pre-operational checklist. Your culture clearly is determined based on the personnel within your organization, whether it be production supervisor, your production workers, sorry, your middle management as well as your senior management. So I'll just look at it from those three angles. Your pre-op checklist can determine whether or not your personnel are conforming to the hygiene requirements, because every morning you come in and you do the pre-operational checklist. Are they complying with the rules of the hygiene policy? When I do my random checks throughout the day, are they complying? Are they aware of what they are supposed to do? I can do SNAP audits, I can use my GMP checklist, it can come through for my internal audits. So those records can actually give you an indication of how your culture is developed. Your culture is working at the production worker, at the line level, I should say. And then now at the top management level or the supervisor level, what type of top management do you, what type of senior management do you have in place in terms of their culture? Are they interested in the implementation of corrective actions or the control of the deviations? Are they interested in your report? Do they have an in-depth and thorough analysis of these verification results? Are they spending time on these verification results? How much time are they spending on these verification results? And that can give you an indication of the culture within the organization.
Thank you, Sheryl. The next question is what to do if you notice that there are issues with food safety culture within my organization, and how to convince the top management to take measures?
I always say that if you're going to speak to management, you should always speak their language, and you speak the language of money. And if you can translate the technical side of the business into a more financial side of the business. In other words, if I don't put these storage requirements in place, this is going to result in an increase of 50% increase in write-offs this year, which is equivalent to $30 million. So you have to translate it in the language that they speak. And when it starts to hit the bottom line and you can actually show the connection between the two, they will start to pay, they will start to pay a lot of attention, a lot more attention to the food safety management system. And in my experience, I've found that that's one of the biggest complaints of CEOs or top management, that sometimes they don't understand the technical language. So they would require the translation into a language that they understand.
Thank you, Ms. Sheryl. And the last question for today is, according to your opinion, should I implement HACCP or ISO 22000?
I always say that It depends on your customers or your market or what you're trying to achieve. ISO 22000 involves HACCP. HACCP is a basic requirement these days. If your customers require that you implement 22,000, I say go to 22,000. If you want to put in HACCP, you want to just meet your basic food safety requirements, and also your customers prefer it, or your market requires it, or your regulatory environment requires it, you have to determine all of those factors before answering that question. So people leave customers out of the analysis. What does your customer require? And you can make a decision based on those answers.
Thank you once again, Ms. Anderson, for this presentation. It was our honor having you as a presenter. I would also like to thank all the attendees for taking the time out of their busy schedule to join us. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. We received all your questions, and because the time is limited, we will answer to your questions individually by email. Also, don't forget to check PCB's webinar schedule on our website, pcb.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and be updated with our weekly webinars. On behalf of PCB and our presenter, we wish you a great weekend.